Eye Contact, a Mark Manning Mystery, Book 2. Author, Michael Kraft. Publisher, Open Road Integrated Media, New York. Narrator, Eric Ost. In a roadside shop near the Wisconsin shore of Lake Michigan, a couple of 100 miles north of Chicago, Mark Manning and David Bosch are taking a break from their long drive. Manning is surprised to see cherries displayed among the produce. Since they're not usually ripe till mid-July, tasting one, he confirms that they're still sour. But he takes a quart anyway. A trip to the peninsula would be incomplete without cherries. He sets the box on the checkout counter where a grandfatherly clerk stands ready to compute the damages. With the approach of the holiday, many people have chosen to book their summer vacations this week, which will be extended by a day. So there's steady traffic on the highway in both directions, and the shop is busy this morning, swamped with motorists from Door County. The peninsula of touristy but still quaint villages that juts northward like a craggy thumb between Green Bay and the lake. David mingles easily with the younger clientele, engaged in an enthusiastic commentary on the variety of fudge. Saran-wrapped bricks of the homemade confection are piled in wooden barrels that bear hand-lettered labels. Walnut, macadamia, chunky cherry, double chocolate, white chocolate, and so on. David is torn, but opts for the plain variety, classic country kitchen, choosing a 1-pound block of it from the barrel. Manning extends a hand, telling David, "I'll get it." David gives Manning the fudge. "Thanks, Mark." Manning hefts it in his palm with a skeptical expression. He looks first at the fudge, then at David, whose body he studies with a gaze that travels from head to toe, returning to make contact with David's eyes. Manning says, "Given your obvious investment in time at the gym, I'd think this stuff would be a no-no." "Sugar won't kill me, or you," says David. "It's all the other crap, preservatives and additives. They can really screw you. An occasional calorie bomb isn't lethal as long as you sweat it off later." "But hey," David aborts his nutrition lecture, clapping a hefty arm across Manning's shoulder. "I hardly need to preach to you about diet. You're as fit as they get." "For a doddering geezer," Manning jokes, enjoying the flattery, fishing for more. "Right," says David, holding Manning's shoulder at arm's length, returning his up-and-down body check. "Some geezer." And then he pulls Manning close for a side-to-side hug. It's the kind of public jock gesture at which David excels, totally at ease with this display of affection, in touch with his own physical nature. Manning recognizes that David's self-confidence, his gregarious manner, has been spawned by the attractiveness that was his luck of the draw from the gene pool. People want to be near him. Strangers readily offer a smile, hoping he will deign to return it. He has never had to think twice about approaching others with a question or a joke or a flirtation. They always respond, and he has never learned to fear rejection. Of course, he exudes self-confidence, and that assurance has fed upon itself over years, shaping a young man whose bodily charms have been honed by training and complemented by a quick intellect. He is truly a golden child, one in a million, whom the world will emulate, envy, and revere. Why then, Manning wonders, has David been so reticent to deal more openly with his own sexuality? Can it be explained by a single factor so simple as a disapproving uncle? Surely not. Or is it David now grappling with the same insecurities that Manning fought and conquered only 2 years ago? Manning has never known the open arms of the adoring world that David's out-and-out beauty is heir to, but Manning has feared the exact same labels that David cannot fathom applied to himself. For the first time in his life, David is dealing with the fear of rejection, and for someone who has never, ever known that fear, the stakes are high indeed. In reaching his plausible understanding of the dilemma that David faces, Manning feels a rush of sympathy for the kid. He wishes he could help assuage the fears that tug at David's still young psyche. He also recognizes the sublime irony of these emotions, that he should condescend to pity the golden child from his own enlightened middle-age perspective. Without a qualm, he returns David's shoulder hug and the milling activity of the shop. This morning, no one notices the uncharacteristic ease with which Manning has indulged in this minor but public display of affection. No one cares that he has crossed another hurdle in a lifelong race for emotional maturity. No one, least of all David, can appreciate the significance of this exchange. Waiting in line to pay, Manning says to David, You were right. It's been a long drive. If you'd like to take over at the wheel, be my guest. Does David want to drive? Needless question. He answers by slipping his fingers into Manning's pants pocket and extracting the keys. It isn't time to leave yet, but he wants to hold them in his hands. Now. He wants to possess them. He'll soon put the keys to use. The couple in front of them load a bag with cheese and trinkets for their trip. They're college kids, a guy and a girl. He wears an Illinois sweatshirt, knee-length jeans, and sandals with socks. A tattoo, a big one, wraps around his right calf. It looks like an eagle or maybe an Indian war bonnet, but it's impossible to be sure since the whole image cannot be seen from one angle. David notices Manning eyeing the decorated leg. He turns his head to whisper in Manning's ear, "Gross, huh?" Manning laughs his agreement. The man behind the counter finally sends the tattooed student and his companion on their way. Manning and David step forward with their fudge, and Manning reminds the proprietor of the cherries already parked there. "No tax on the produce," says the old man, thinking aloud. "But the governor gets 5% on the fudge." He pulls a figure out of thin air. Manning pays him, and David picks up the brown paper bag, following the keys in his other hand. Outdoors, walking to the car, Manning notes, "It's a lot cooler up here." Indeed, the jet stream, that's working its way south toward Chicago, has already dipped into Wisconsin, bringing with it drier air and a blue sky without haze. A breeze carries the scent of pine. David eagerly opens the driver's door and sits behind the wheel, setting the brown bag and back on the floor. By the time Manning opens the passenger door for himself, David is busy readjusting the seat, mirrors, and steering wheel, with both authority and childlike anticipation. He inserts the key and turns the ignition. With a whir of the engine and the chiming of various system checks, the car comes to life. David just sits there, both hands stuck to the wheel, savoring a moment he has longed for. "Whenever you're ready," Manning tells him. David needs no further prompting. He shifts into drive and steers Manning's black sedan out of the gravel parking lot and onto the highway. "Awesome," he says. There's no other word that suits the experience, and he offers no apology for it. Any apprehensions Manning felt about letting David drive are soon overcome, and he gets comfortable for the first time as a passenger in his own car. He sees that David's manner behind the wheel is conscientious and mature, revealing a facet of the young man's personality that Manning might not otherwise have discovered. He glances at his watch. It's just past 10:30. They should arrive in Bailey's Harbor within an hour or so. The time will pass agreeably, Manning decides, and he considers the possibility of napping during this last leg of the journey. Oddly, though, Manning finds he is no longer tired. The cooler weather, the wooded scenery, the ability to relax and not concentrate on the road, all these factors have made him alert and conscious of his surroundings. What's more, there's something in the back of his mind that needs attention, some bit of unfinished business. Several miles pass in silence as he mulls the gnawing thought. Damn, he'd like to set it aside, forget about it, but he just can't put a period on it. "Ah!" he says. David, startled, looks at Manning, breaking his steady gaze on the road. The car swerves, but its course is quickly righted. "Sorry," Manning explains, "but I was trying to think of something. It just came to me." "Care to share it?" asked David, eyes ahead. "Yes, actually, it's about you. Back in the shop, seeing that guy's tattooed leg reminded me of a discussion you and I had at the party last Saturday." "Oh," David pretends not to recall it. "Don't be coy now. You did your share of teasing that night. We were talking about the popularity of tattoos among young people, and you dismissed the fad as kid stuff, informing me that you were into something else entirely. If your intention was to tantalize me, you've succeeded, so fess up. What is it?" David smiles. He turns just long enough to look Manning in the eye and tells him, "Body piercing." "What?" Manning wasn't prepared for that. Not by a long shot. He thought more than likely drugs. That's something David would be reluctant to discuss with an older coworker. If not drugs, then Manning might have guessed some playful but kinky fetish. Ladies' underwear, maybe. Well, maybe not. But body piercing? Manning stares at David. There's no apparent trace of this interest, not even a single dot in his earlobe. "Where?" David doesn't move his eyes from the road. The pause is not a reluctant one, but intended to deliver maximum impact. "Nipples." "Ouch! Both?" David nods. "I had the first one done, the left one, a few years ago, one summer during college. Some of the guys were doing it, and I thought, why not? It took some getting used to, but I eventually came to like it. More important, other people seem to like it, and because they don't see it till clothes start coming off, it always brings an element of surprise to the situation. I'll bet, says Manny, your pierced nipple becomes a conversation piece, something to talk about like the weather. David laughs. Yeah, you could say that. Anyway, I figured if this doesn't work out, it's easily removed and the hole eventually fills in again. I'd been done with it, no permanent scars, but I found that I really liked the look and the feel of it, plus it had that unexpected payoff with other friends at the right moment. There was one minor problem, though. I always felt sort of unbalanced by it. I've worked hard on my body, and the symmetry was shot. This bothered me so much, I finally decided I'd have to either undo the left nipple or get the right one pierced too. So a few weeks ago, nipple number 2 got the treatment. I feel much better about myself now. This is all too bizarre. Manning still suspects it's a joke, but he hasn't heard the punchline yet. He says, I'm not at all sure I believe you. And David says nothing. Instead, he removes his left hand from the wheel and places it over his right chest. He displays his index and middle finger, stretching the pike of his polo shirt over his nipple. Sure enough, there's a peculiar bulge beneath the fabric. It looks like something man-made, something like hardware. Okay, Manny believes his own eyes. He's surprised to realize that he's highly intrigued and a bit aroused by this revelation. Are they, reeks? The new one is. David pats his right breast. But the first one is something like a little barbell, which required a bigger hole. It hurts like hell and took forever to heal. I didn't want to go through that again, so I chose a simple ring. The second time, it's already healed. Manny is so amazed by this story. It's the last thing he expected to discuss this morning. All he can say is, this I've got to see. Though Manning has spoken figuratively, David takes him at his word, and without hesitation begins pulling his shirt out of his pants. The car swerves. Whoa! Manning reaches to steady the wheel. That can wait. Once David has control of the car again, Manning adds, I do want you to show me, but later. Just say when. David is clearly pleased that he's sparked Manning's interest. He's sparked more than that. David's story has affected his listener in many ways. Manning is surprised. He just wasn't prepared to hear these things. He's amused. It's also goofy, a kid thing. He's intrigued. What would compel this level-headed young man to willingly endure twice the pain of self-mutilation? And Manning is, by now, the more he ponders these things, highly aroused. Needing to sort this out, he says to David, I'm curious. You've had some body piercing done because, at least partly, it's a fad. Pure and simple, and you said you liked the way it looks, so there's an element of, let's say, aesthetics. But you could have pierced your ears, or your nose, or any number of places, but you opted for the nipples, and you said that you also liked the way it feels. It sounds as if this goes way beyond fad or fashion. It sounds as if you get an erotic charge out of it. David's grin confirms that Manning has nailed the issue, he admits. There's definitely that edge, yes. Manning turns to peer vacantly through the side window. He puckers his lips, exhaling a silent whistle. Giant pines, responding to his call, march from the cool shadows to the edge of the roadway, like a wall of quiet sentries. Their frilly skirted great coats rush past the car in a bluish blur. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.